How's it going, guys? David here, back again to review The Walking Dead, and this time it is for the third episode of Season 5, entitled Strangers, and spoilers will follow, so if you have not seen the episode, stay away, go watch it, and then come back. And this was the episode that I looked at and said, this is the kind of episode that I really do enjoy, but it's mainly because of the character development that happens within it, as opposed to the much more action-packed pacing that we had last week. And, of course, it is the episode that I think a lot of people are going to be like, oh, this is kind of boring. Although there's one particular element that I think everybody across the board will look at and go, okay, this is immensely interesting. Before I get to that, what was up with that opening? Okay, I don't know what it was, but I just found something off about that opening. It felt kind of cheesy, having them all walk in slow motion and then cutting to what each one of them were thinking to each other, whether it be with Abraham about Washington D.C. or Rick about whatever it was, I can't seem to remember, and of course Carol about not wanting to talk about what happened with the two people back at the prison, as well as Tyrese not wanting to talk about the girls that they had to kill when him and Carol were by themselves in what a lot of people perceive to be the best episode of last season, the Grove, and I kind of second their opinion. But the way it was edited together and presented, it felt like I was watching the 90s version of The Walking Dead. There's this viral video on YouTube of somebody that took the opening of The Walking Dead, and they also I think they did it with Breaking Bad too, and they made it seem like it was a 90s TV show. The opening for this felt like a 90s TV show, but that gets pushed to the side quickly when we get the new element that I think everybody is going to love. I personally loved, and I didn't think that it was going to happen so early in the season. It's only the second episode, and I'm all for it, and that is the introduction of Father Gabriel. It's been a while that we had a new character get introduced, not since the load of new characters in the form of Ford, Eugene, and Rosita. Not since then have we had a new introduction of a new character. So I think that's rather cool. And the fact that it's only just one, I don't know what it is, but as opposed to those three from the latter half of season 4, which is Ford and Rosita and Eugene, I think it's kind of more interesting that we're only introducing one character. That way we can focus more on him. And I find this character rather neat. He's very interesting. He's definitely hiding something. But it's something that he's trying to forget and trying to keep away. Because we can tell that this guy is harmless. But his past and what he's involved with, it might be completely the opposite and could endanger the group. Which gives emphasis to what Rick tells him at the end that says, hey, whatever you're hiding, if that comes to bite my group back in the ass, you're dead. And I can see why Rick feels this way. And another thing that I found interesting about this episode is how much I was able to side with Rick on his decisions and on his mentality throughout the episode. Because, he just does not trust anybody, and I can definitely see it, which is why I found it kind of funny where Carl is trying to back up Father Gabriel and say, hey, not everybody's bad, and Rick just gives him that look like, we are 5 seasons into this thing. Have you not seen the shit that we've gone through? Are you kidding me? And another element that I really liked about this episode involving Rick is his decision to want to go to DC by the end of the episode. I feel like it was a natural thing for him to do, because if I was in his position, and being that I don't really have a place to stay, and I would hardly call that church a place to stay, I would definitely say, yeah, you know what, screw it, let's just go to DC, and at least we have some kind of chance to cure this whole thing there. And on the other side, we got Ford, who's trying to convince the group to go to DC, who unanimously decide to go by the end of the episode. And I loved how all of them didn't really bother to argue, because I'm getting just a little tired of that, of them saying, no, we need to stay here, no, we need to do that. Which is why I felt like that scene at the very beginning where I believe it was Michonne saying that we need to stay for at least a day to get some supplies, but then Abraham saying, no, that'll only slow us down. Did anybody else feel like that was a telltale Walking Dead video game moment? Because when that scene happened, I was ready to pick up my controller and be like, okay, so, oh, right. It's the TV show. But what I also like is that the writers, which was Robert Kirkman this time, Robert Kirkman himself wrote this episode, and I think it definitely shows. A good thing too, because I felt a vibe from the comics. I've read a little bit of the comics, not all the way caught up, but it definitely has that feel, and it definitely has the feel of the video game, which is supposed to resemble more the comic book than the TV show. So I felt that vibe. I felt like this episode definitely came from the source material and was more true to the source material. So I really enjoyed that, especially when you're introducing a vital character like Father Gabriel. And so I also liked how he treated Ford's argument. He backed himself up with a compliment by saying, "Hey, all of you guys are survivors. You kick ass. You're awesome. But we gotta move on and at least take a chance on this place." And everybody had the same collective decision to say, "Yeah, why not? I mean, as long as we got each other, we're cool." And a theme that I really appreciated being brought into this. I mean, we've seen bits of it before, but here it's coming in full force, and this may or may not turn off some people from the show. I mean, they're not. I don't think they're gonna necessarily stop watching the show, but they're definitely gonna look at it and be like, "I'm not sure about this," mainly from a personal level, and that is the inclusion of religion, because Father Gabriel is every other sentence that he says involves God, and so I think that's a very interesting topic to tackle here in The Walking Dead. And again, I know they couldn't have gotten a better person to write this episode than the guy who created the whole damn thing, Kirkman. And so I really do dig the inclusion of religion here with this character, because when I saw a group of survivors here walk into the church and see all this stuff about church, whether it be that copy that he's at least what appears to be a copy of the Bible, and then you got all these paintings and things that are all very religious. You can look at their look at their facial expressions, and you can kind of tell, like, oh yeah, this is what the world was like. I remember religion. We don't even talk about that thing. So to bring that up again, I don't know. It just makes for an interesting topic for The Walking Dead to tackle, and a ballsy one, because, like I said, this could turn off some people from watching the show. So I think it's very interesting to bring that theme and to make the dead feel a lot more biblical, but more epic in that respect, and making our characters think about what is or what is not the real world. Like, just like that conversation between Rick and Bob, where Bob sees this as simply just a nightmare, whereas Rick sees this as the real world. So that could play in part with the whole religious aspect of bringing this character in, but without getting into race, it's almost like The Walking Dead has a certain amount of slots of African American people that they can fit into their show. And once they introduce Father Gabriel, who's African American, they're like, I think we might have too many black people here. I think we're going to have to take one out. Oh, I know, let's take out Bob. And from the looks of it, it is time to pay our final goodbyes to Bob, because as soon as, oh my god, there were so many signs throughout this episode that I'm like, yeah, I think we're overdue for a harsh, impactful death. And it looks like it's going to come in the form of Bob Stuckey. Because this was the character that I honestly thought that his death was going to come a little earlier in the show, particularly in Season 4. But he managed to survive all this time, and so to see him start to go out, because that's the thing, he doesn't really go out in this episode. They just have the obvious happen after giving us the signs that this was going to happen. You have that scene where he has officially gone together with Sasha, and they're all kissing, and of course Tyrese approves, because this is probably going to be the only guy that his sister's going to like. So he's like, yeah, screw it, you guys are good. And so he's all smiling, and everybody's all happy and everything. And then, like I said, he has that conversation with Rick, but he has the more optimistic viewpoint that he's always had, which made him the more likely character. Well, he was a likable character, but the more likely character to bite the dust because of how likable he was. And then we have the scene in that cellar of sorts, in that place that Father Gabriel takes them to, which is a really good scene. That scene was not only very suspenseful and really well shot, but the inclusion of a new kind of walker, which are these, well, it's not really new because we've seen them before, especially in Season 2 with the well walker, the walker that was in the well that was all bloated. These are similar walkers, but they were all slimy and soggy, and they were genuinely gross. I found these walkers more gross than the natural walkers with all their blood and gore and just flesh dangling from. I don't know, I found something much more grotesque about these walkers with their flesh actually dangling and becoming much more slimy rather than flesh-like. That was just more appalling to me than the regular walkers. So that was cool. But on top of that, that scene where Bob is like, okie dokie, I'm gonna go get this. Oops. I knew right from the beginning of that scene that I'm like, something's gonna grab Bob and pulls him under. And right when he pulls out and he's like, I'm okay now, I'm like, you're bit. Bye-bye, Bob. What I do appreciate, though, is that they never had a forced shot of him, like, removing his shirt or pulling it up and showing the camera, like, hey, look, I got bit. They just play it subtle by having him just express, but just look on his face. That was easy enough to convey the message that, yeah, I'm dead. But before we get a chance to ever explore that, he gets banged over the head and kidnapped, taken away somewhere near a campfire. He wakes up and surprise, surprise! Garrett is back. Yes, he survived, which, I did speculate. It wasn't... I'm not necessarily disappointed, despite the fact that you guys know how I feel about the character. I think he's kind of meh. Although, I felt his personality a little more menacing in that one scene that he had in this episode than the previous ones. In the previous ones, he just looked like a guy that tried to be the villain. But because he's the main guy in this group of survivors from Terminus at the end of this episode, he felt a little more menacing. Especially when it gets revealed that the motherfuckers ate Bob's leg. That's the kind of darkness that I really appreciate from this show, that I felt like we haven't really approached that much in recent memory. And so for the show to all of a sudden go that dark, I'm like, oh, that's what I like to call balls dropping. And along with that, we also get the reveal that guy with the baseball cap, yeah, Tyrese never killed him. Which crossed my mind in the middle of this week. I was eating dinner or something like that, and then I thought to myself, we never actually saw him kill him. Cut away from that, we never actually saw the body. Tyrese stopped Carol from looking at it. Shit. So that positive thing that I said about last week's episode of completing that arc of Tyrese finally killing somebody because he needed to, yeah, I'm gonna have to take that away because he never really did it. I'm hoping that he will be the one to finally take this guy out. Just like I feel like it would be very justified for Bob to take out Garrett here. Alright? A leg for you. Now, how does he take him out? Well, there's the possibility that maybe he has been bitten, so maybe he'll do it in the form of becoming a walker and eating his ass. Hey, you ate my leg. Now I'm going to eat all of you. That would be very poetic and very badass, but it will come at the cost of having to see Bob as a walker. So maybe they'll go for the more edgy approach of having him to still be alive but taking out Garrett before taking himself out, or having Sasha take him out. I don't know. I could predict this in so many ways, but it's a very interesting and very dark moment for the episode, and a very neat twist for the show in general so far in its 5th season. And like I said, combine that with the inclusion of Father Gabriel and just the themes of bringing up religion, as well as some of the character arcs, especially with Rick of not trusting anybody. This made for a very solid and very neat and interesting episode. It's a little slower paced, it's not filled with an awful lot of action, but because we introduced a new character, there's something there to keep our attention. And I could hardly find anything wrong with this episode. If there was one thing, it would be the possible allusion to a love triangle, my god, between Glenn, Maggie, and that lesbian girl. I can't remember her name. It starts with a K, I believe. I can't remember. But, first of all, I thought you were a lesbian. Then again, she is in that age where she might not know what she is. So, I don't know. But, and this is the apocalypse show, you find your pleasure where you can find it. But that whole thing withstanding, I don't care. Please don't do it. And at that scene later on with her and Maggie, and how she confesses to Maggie that, yeah, I was on the side of the governor, but then I saw what he did, and so I'm not with that anymore. I'm sorry. Maybe that's what the illusion was. Maybe it's not a love triangle. Maybe the expression on her face after seeing how Glenn is with Maggie, maybe that's her wrestling with wanting to tell them that, hey, I was with the governor. I'm hoping that that was simply just the case, and after that, she's not going to look at them twice like she was in this episode. But if she does, then sure enough, they're going with the love triangle angle, and I am not going to dig it whatsoever. So besides that, I found this episode to be really, really good. It wasn't as action-packed as last week's, but it made up for that in the introduction of a new character and bringing new themes that are worth talking about and make the show interesting. So for that, I give Strangers a solid 8 out of 10. And I guess the only two other things that I can talk about before I wrap up is, one, where are Carol and Daryl gonna end up when following that car? Because they got the car to work, so that'll be interesting. A car chase scene in The Walking Dead. That would be pretty cool. And what will it lead to? Because we kind of know that this is not Garrett and his group of lackeys. So who are these people? Are they tied in with Father Gabriel? Are these the people that Father Gabriel are trying to hide from? I mean, they did have a cross there on the back of the car. And surely we will finally figure out what happened to Beth. Is she alive? Is she dead? Did she get eaten? We'll hopefully figure that out either in the next episode or the one after that. And the other interesting thing to note is that right after Bob gets knocked out and right before they cut away, you can see a slash, a very intricate slash in that tree. So are the symbols that Morgan from last week's episode, okay, I had some people say, why didn't you not, well, not some people, like one person said that, why did I not talk about Morgan's return from last week's episode? That was because I had no idea that The Walking Dead was a Marvel production, a Marvel Studios production, because now they're putting scenes at the end of the episode. And God knows, maybe I missed another one for this week. I don't know if there was. I'm probably, after this video, I'm probably going to go back and check. Sorry. But I missed it. I went back, I watched it, and awesome. You know, Morgan's one of my favorite characters in the show so far. He was one of the reasons why he was the reason why Clear was my favorite episode of season 3. And so he's an interesting character. He looks to have become a badass character, and I'm hoping to see how he plays into that. But for now, what we do know is that he's following those symbols that are written on the tree that were more likely left there by Garrett and his group. So is this gonna propel Morgan to find Rick and join his group? And does that mean that we're gonna lose one more black character? I'm sorry, that's a terrible joke. But let me know what you guys thought of this week's episode, because I found it to be immensely interesting, and I'll definitely see you guys next time. Take care.